Hello, everybody. Welcome to Accounts Receivable Part 7. This is write-ups of accounts receivable, collecting accounts receivable previously written off. So far to date, what we've really been dealing with is we've been going through and computing, and let me just go to these steps real quick. And where do we go? Okay. We've been dealing with determining the ending balance of accounts receivable. That was really videos 5 and 6. And we had a beginning balance. And then we basically came over here to bad debt expense. But there can also be some other things that go through and happen with accounts receivable when we are going through and dealing with an aging of accounts receivable. Now, if we know that an account receivable is not going to be collected, for example, Mattel, Toys R Us goes out of business, right? They're going to talk to the bankruptcy trustee. I'm getting nothing. So what we're going to do is when we write off an account receivable, we do not touch bad debt expense. The reason is because we have already established an allowance account. So the way we're going to write off accounts receivable is we are going to debit the allowance for doubtful accounts, and we're going to credit accounts receivable. We're taking the accounts receivable off of our books. And what's really important to take that AR off the books, I'm going to be crediting accounts receivable. I will be debiting the allowance for doubtful accounts. This journal entry will never, ever, ever change when I am writing off an account receivable. Very important one to go through and memorize. So again, I write off AR. I've done whatever I can to collect it, and now I'm not going to collect it, so I have to take it off my books. So now, what can happen sometimes? Well, when I was teaching at Pasadena City College, I was teaching my very first class there in the fall of 2013. It was a pretty awesome class. That's when I got asked, do you suck as a professor, Tchaikovsky? And I got to say, well, have you seen the movie Gladiator? And they said yes, which was shocking. And then I tell them, well, give me a thumbs down if you think I suck. So lovely story. But right over here, if we collect accounts receivable that we've previously written off, and my religious example comes from that Pasadena class. There was a student who shared with me that his father ran a food truck business. And there was somebody who rented a food truck, but they didn't pay, but they came back 5 years later and they said, for religious purposes, I'm paying you back. Wow, that's like my favorite type of religion, is when you're getting money back that it was due 5 years ago. But if we collect AR, so we wrote off the receivable, right? I wrote it off previously. If they come back later and pay it, I've got to do two things. The first thing is going to do, it's going to reverse the curse. I'm going to go ahead and basically restore the receivable by going through and debiting accounts receivable and crediting the allowance for doubtful accounts. I am reestablishing that receivable because now they're paying me the cash, but I got to basically reverse the curse. So I got to flip this around. I'm going to debit AR, credit the allowance for doubtful accounts. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and collect the cash. So over here, I'm going to debit cash, credit accounts receivable. You always want to go through and do these two steps when you're going through and doing the journal entry. So if we wrote it off before and now they're paying it back, we reestablish the receivable by debiting AR, crediting the allowance for doubtful accounts. And now we're going to show the cash coming in by debiting cash and crediting accounts receivable. Let's take a quick look at an example I have for you here today. So on 7/1/25, LAX wrote off a $75,000 receivable from Oakland. So what we're going to do here is when I write off an accounts receivable. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to debit the allowance for doubtful accounts for $75,000. I'm going to debit the ADA. So right over here, I'm going to be debiting my allowance for doubtful accounts. I'm going to debit this for $75,000. I'm going to credit accounts receivable for the $75,000, and this is to write off an accounts receivable. This is how I write off an AR when I'm using the allowance method. Over here, 8/1/25. I collect a receivable of $50,000 that had been written off in 2024 from SFO. Now, what do I need to do? Well, the first thing I need to do is I did this back in 2024, but for SFO, not for Oakland. So what I need to do is I need to reestablish the receivable. I'm going to debit accounts receivable right over here for 50,000, and I'm going to credit my allowance for doubtful accounts for 50,000. Okay, but I'm not done yet. And why am I not done? Well, I wrote it off previously, but now I'm collecting money. So I'm going to be debiting cash, and then I'm going to credit accounts receivable for the 50,000. So over here, this journal entry description will be to collect accounts receivable previously written off. So this is how we handle a write-off of an account receivable. And then over here is how we're going to handle a collection of an account receivable previously written off. So we will be doing a comprehensive example in a few moments. Once we go through and do that one, you'll be pretty good. You'll be almost pretty good to go in terms of AR. And then we'll do one last one, but that should wrap up things for this section. So I really want to thank you for joining me here today. Please leave any questions you might have below. Appreciate you liking and subscribing to the videos, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day.